But you're worried about the cost? Catherine's Way does offer scholarship programs. They don't turn anyone away who's seeking help. And you can find out more about Catherine's Way and how to contact them on our website. Well, we are celebrating a very special anniversary here at the station. Richard Rogers has been anchoring the news here for 30 years. So this morning, we're flipping the script on Richard. He's our studio guest, with Laura Warren asking the questions in this week's one-on-one.
So we have Richard Rogers in a very uncomfortable seat because you're the guy used to asking all the questions.
That's the way I prefer it. So can we just let me ask you a few questions about what you've been doing lately?
Oh, no. We are here to do the deep dive. 30 years is what we are celebrating. And before we dive into all the hard questions, we want to take a quick look back over the last 3 decades.
Let's go.
WRDW-TV, Augusta.
I'm Richard Rogers.
For 30 years, he's been the voice behind the good times.
Welcome back live to Augusta National. You know, there's a lot.
And there to guide us through the bad.
We have to imagine that with the stalled engine, he put it down where he could, and that was right here.
Before he landed in Augusta, he traveled up and down the East Coast from Savannah to Wilmington, then Jacksonville.
Here at Nag's Head, when high tide finally went out last night.
He traded in his morning alarm for the evening news and moved with his wife and all-time favorite co-anchor, Jill, making North Augusta their home. It's where his son Zach and daughter Zoe were born and raised.
Pros of being Richard Rogers' daughter and my dad being a newsman is that all my friends thought that he was so cool, and they used to beg him to read the Polar Express to them whenever they would come over.
It's hard to believe it's been 30 years. You've certainly been doing it for longer than I can remember.
And he has the bubblegum cigar boxes welcoming Zach and Zoe into the world in his desk drawer still to prove it.
I think the most impressive thing is that somehow you haven't aged a day. So congratulations again from us. We love you.
Cons is that we could not go to Publix without the bakery ladies stopping us and asking for autographs and photos. Congratulations to 30 years, Dad. You're the best dad I could ever know. And cheers to 30 more years on the news.
His favorite Augusta news memories span from covering musical greats like the Godfather of Soul.
Right, Richard Rogers.
Sharon Jones.
Here's to beating cancer.
Right.
Here's to Miss Sharon Jones.
Thank you.
Cheers.
And Jesse Norman. And of course, his favorite assignment every year, the Masters Tournament.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Richard Rogers, live at Augusta National.
But his impact on journalism isn't just felt here in Augusta.
Hi from Miami. RR, it's LT out in the field here in Atlanta. Hi, Richard from Boston. From all the way in Portland, Oregon.
Double R, Richard, it's me, coming at you from Atlanta at 4 a.m.
It's all over the world in the stories told every day by hundreds of journalists who've learned a little something from their time in Augusta from one of the greats.
You are a legend and an icon in the market. And to me personally, I consider you a friend and a mentor, somebody who really helped me out as I was learning and growing in journalism.
Richard, my dear, I love you so much. Congratulations on 30 years.
I am so grateful to have worked with you, to have learned from you, to be inspired by you, encouraged by you, to be in a band with you, and to be your running buddy.
Thank you so much for all of your advice and help. There's so many journalists, including myself, that are spread out all across the country that you've taught how to tell stories.
You made me a better journalist, you made me a better runner, and you definitely made me a better person too.
You're one of the nicest people ever, but your work ethic, you bring so much to the community, to the station, and so many people are just so grateful for all the things that you've done over the years.
Congratulations on 30 years.
So until he rolls into retirement, hopefully in another decade or so, join us in saying congratulations on 30 years to the best of the best, Richard Rogers. A lot of memories crammed into those 30 years. I wanted to talk
About some of the biggest stories you've covered. Obviously, there have been several, but you were here during the Graniteville train disaster.
Absolutely. That's one of those days where people were afraid to stay in their homes. They were afraid to leave their homes. And that's when TV news really comes into play. And I felt good about our coverage that day. We had the governor come into town. We had Sheriff Hunt over in Aiken giving us information. And people, we had people really, literally saying the watch on my wrist is corroding because of the chlorine in the air. It was a dangerous situation, and it gives me chills to think about. It was a deadly situation. I think TV news in general did a good job that day, and I was glad to be part of that coverage.
What are some of those moments, I'm sure that day, maybe 9/11, but what are some of those, oh my goodness, like almost jarring moments when you're in the chair that you remember being like, wow, what we're communicating to people, this is life and death. This is important stuff.
Yeah, 9/11 was a huge shock, of course, for everyone. The Granville train disaster. I had another one in my mind that just flipped right out of it, that we were all just stunned. The January 6th. As we watched at the station, January 6th, we couldn't believe what we were seeing. So it's days like that where you just step back and go, what we do is important. And I've had people say that local news, they like us because we are down the middle. We do not spin the news. We make it an effort not to spin the news. And I think our viewers appreciate that, and in some cases hold us in higher regard than some of the networks they watch.
Yeah, sometimes
so I appreciate that.
I do too. Sometimes it's a privilege to be able to be on the local level because, you know, you don't know Nora O'Donnell. You may see her every day, but you're not getting your groceries there. But we have that trust that we build because you go to church with these people, you go to school with these
We
people.
live here, and we're going to hear from them one way or the other.
Right.
We're going to hear from them, and not just social media either. We'll see them, like you say, face to face.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the more fun memories. Obviously, you love covering the Masters every year.
That is so much fun, and there's that one picture of all of us gathered, and I'm looking at this new tie that I just bought. The story behind that was I was shocked by the price tag when I got it to the counter. This was in one of the pro shops I probably shouldn't have been shopping in.
Right, I recall. I was there.
And I was shocked at how much it cost, and I was going to keep it anyway. And I'm thinking, I did this, and we snapped that picture right along the first fairway.
Yeah, it's a hard place to hand over your credit card and be like, oh, excuse me, that limit might not be there.
Give me that back before it melts. That was a fun day, and I've loved covering the Masters from Tiger Woods as an amateur to Arnold Palmer walking his last round there, and Jack Nicklaus. So we've seen some amazing things at Augusta National over the years. That's been a privilege to cover. I've been in other markets where we had golf tournaments. We had Harbor Town, of course. We had the Players Championship on the Florida coast. The Masters, there's nothing like it. There's just nothing like it.
They're really not. You've had some big moments here, too. Obviously, home to a lot of famous people, James Brown.
Yes.
You kind of became buds with James Brown, I would say. And a lot of people don't know this. You share a birthday with James Brown, May 3rd.
Brown and I have May 3rd together. In fact, when I first saw him that day, when I'm introducing myself, after all that was over, he signed pictures for us, all of us in the crew. And on mine, he just wrote, happy birthday. I love that, too. And, May 3rd will always be James Brown's birthday first, but I also celebrate on the side.
I know. You always like to make sure that we're celebrating James Brown's birthday and keep his very low key. Richard doesn't like a whole lot of fanfare, so
here I am in front of all this.
This whole thing is making it very uncomfortable.
I'm sweating through my suit.
I personally love, because fanfare is my middle name. I'm like, let's pile it on.
But doing the one-on-one with James Brown, of course, getting to know Deanna Brown, touring his estate, that's something I hope is on YouTube for people to see, because I want that estate to become the Graceland of James Brown.
And that was
the estate
kind of what they wanted, right?
And that is still the plan, but we've got to get that place open for people to see how James Brown lived in Aiken County. I think it's a great story, still waiting to be told, so hopefully they'll do that.
So you have sort of a musical background for people who don't know. You originally kind of wanted to be a drummer.
I do. I don't remember not having a drum set in my house. I grew up with drums around me. The Beatles were big when I was a kid, and so off I went playing the drums. And I didn't figure out TV news until late in college.
But obviously found your way here and excelled, but you always loved covering some of those greats, and we had so many come through. Jesse Norman, you got the chance to sit down with.
An amazing person who loved her little school in downtown Augusta and loved the fact that she could provide something that public schools weren't doing anymore. A lot of public schools took the arts away, and she said, Jesse Norman said, I think it's important enough to establish a school for these kids to be exposed to music and art and poetry and everything else, and she's right. It escalates their academics to do that.
It's an incredible school. And also Sharon Jones, a lot of people don't know this, but Richard sort of planted the seed to name that amphitheater, kind of planted the seed with the mayor at the time, and now there is a Sharon Jones amphitheater. And, you know, she did end up losing her long battle with cancer, but what a special lady from North Augusta.
We sat down there on the dock that day in a couple of Masters chairs. You saw us toasting with a couple of bottles of water in your story, and she told me that day, you know, Richard, when I'm gone, I just want a little tree somewhere with a plaque on it with my name on it. And I think the amphitheater is a step above that. I think she would approve. And Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings, Google that and watch some of her YouTube. She was really famous around the world. You could turn on Jimmy Fallon at 11 o'clock at night, 11:30, and see her sitting in with the Roots.
She's incredible. I mean, such a talented singer and performer, but
Daptone Records in Brooklyn is where she loved and where she helped wire the place for sound. She was an electrician on the side. She was a guard at Rikers before she found her way back to music.
Such a cool story.
What a story she is.
Well, we could certainly go on forever and ever, but I won't, because I know Richard would be like, let's wrap it up. But I do want to ask you, looking back over 30 years, you're sitting in this chair, you're talking to yourself 30, 40 years ago. What would you say about your career and advice?
If I'm talking to the young me,
Young you.
You've done the right thing. You're in the right place. Keep doing what you're doing, and the time is going to fly by. So embrace every day. And thank you for allowing me to tell some of these stories and look back over these memories. It's been great. I don't know how you feel about your time here, but it's flown by for me.
It does. Every time, we work on kind of a contract basis, so we're living life on a 3-year stint usually, trying to figure out what's next. But by the time you're halfway in, you're like, well, that was fast.
That was fast.
They say time flies when you're having fun, but it's also the people,
That's exactly it, and I enjoy coming back to work every day. And you know this, we learn something here new every day.
Yeah.
We look at each other and say, that's why we came to work today, right there.
Sometimes it's super random, sometimes it's really important, but it's so true. Well, Richard Rogers, 30 years, thanks for being here to celebrate with us. And be sure, if you see him in Kroger or Publix, to grab him and tell him happy 30th. Make a big fanfare about it. He'll love that.
I'll be looking for you.
I've been a journalist since 2007. I've watched his stories, and being here for a year and some change, I've definitely learned from Richard. So a huge congrats from me and all of us here at News 12 on 30 years. And here's to 30 more. All right, coming up, does fall weather make you crave apple flavors? Well, stick around to find out where you can go for your apple pie in the sky. That's coming up next. Chris?